Thank you for joining us on the Overcomers Overcoming podcast series, where we profile those who have overcome or those who are in the process of overcoming any life topic. We have three objectives with this podcast series. Our first objective is we want you to know that whatever you're experiencing in life, whatever you're encountering, you're not alone. We want to join you to let you know that we together can help you through whatever challenge you may have that at the time may seem too difficult to be able to overcome. Our second objective is to help you determine with a very confident resolve there are multiple solutions, multiple factors involved in any life encounter. It's a matter of thinking into and thinking through the life situation you are encountering to determine the various options, the various solutions that are available to you. Our third objective is to help you with critical thinking skills. If whatever you're experiencing is a result of a decision you made sometime in the past, such that if you had a life redo, you would make a different decision, we want to help you determine the objective facts and factors to evaluate to help you reach a more informed decision. I'm Ron Cooper, founder of the Cooper Culture. I'm with my wife and business partner, Marty. Together, we are the Cooper Culture, and the Cooper Culture is sponsoring this podcast series. Today, we feature Scott Maderer for a second episode, where we go into a little further discussion of limiting beliefs. Limiting beliefs are of the type that I'm just not certain I can do it. It's a little bit of self-talk. You'll hear Scott refer to Harry as a voice. He has named an avatar, the avatar who tries to keep him safe, and that is from venturing out into difficult things. Marty, what are some takeaways our listeners can gain from this podcast?
Ron, I think with Scott tonight, he talked about who are you listening to in your mind? Are you listening to the positive person or are you listening to the negative person? The negative person is just going to drag you down and get you to the point where I can't do it, I don't want to do it, I'm not even going to try. But if you listen to the positive one and you think about good things all day long, positive thoughts all day long, that gives you energy to move forward and do what you really want to do.
Let's be positive, Martha. Let's listen to the podcast and learn together. Scott, thank you so much for joining us for our second episode. For our listeners who may be joining us for the first time, Scott, Marty, and I talked about personal behavior and performance, and we discussed just a little bit of limiting beliefs. And Scott, my thought of limiting beliefs is some people just doubt whether they can do something that is worthwhile. They may not have the confidence to do it. It could be any number of things that keep a person from achieving something that may be, hard to do, but yet is worthy of accomplishing. And I wonder what your thoughts are about limiting belief and how we can help someone over limiting the beliefs such that they can have the confidence to work toward a worthwhile goal.
Limiting beliefs is really kind of a big thing, a big bucket when you think about it. But we all have beliefs about the world. That's the first thing to understand. We all have beliefs about ourselves. We all have beliefs about the world. We have beliefs about how things work or don't work. And that's natural. That's normal. That's what all human beings do. And the truth is, most of us don't ever spend any sort of time or energy examining those beliefs or understanding those beliefs or asking questions about those beliefs. They're just the beliefs we have. They're how we see the world. And therefore, they must be right because they're how we see the world. And yet, it's usually not that simple. And so in the framework of limiting beliefs, they kind of come in three broad buckets, right? The first one is a belief about myself that holds me back. That's kind of what you were referring to first. So I believe that I don't have the skills or the ability or the knowledge or the capability or the whatever. I don't believe I can do it. The second is I may believe something about the external world that holds me back from doing it. I may believe that with the way the world is, someone like me can never get ahead, or with the way the world is, it never works out for people in this category or for anything like that. It may be an external feeling about how the world operates that's holding you back. And then the third is you may have belief about just kind of life in general. That generally means you feel like it's just too hard. It's just too difficult to do anything because, again, the situation I find myself in is just too hard to operate out of that situation. So it's sort of self-beliefs, it's sort of external beliefs, and then it's just sort of beliefs about life in general being too hard, or the what a lot of times people will call the victim mindset that kind of blocks people and tends to hold them back.
Talk to us a little bit about your thoughts. And this is believe in internal limiting belief. There's some people who just lack confidence. I just don't think I can. I'm just devoid of confidence. And that may be part of their environment. They were raised that way. Maybe they failed at a task or two that they took on, and they may think something like to the effect, I'm always blamed for not finishing. I'm not sure I can succeed in, I've had enough failings that I just don't even want to get started in it type thing. Can you help a person overcome something like that, Scott?
Well, you can't actually help them overcome it. However, you can help them overcome it. And what I mean by that subtle difference in language is I never can overcome someone else's beliefs. We can't change other people. What we can do is provide an environment and support and structure that allows people to change. So it's a different thing than forcing someone to change their limiting beliefs. You can't make someone develop confidence. How can you create a situation and an environment and a structure where over time someone develops confidence? Absolutely. But you can't, it's the same as you can't motivate other people. So a couple of things that come to mind when you're talking about those sort of self-limiting beliefs. And the first one is what I like to call the 3 Ps. So in general, if you find a belief and you begin to state it, and you actually said this as you were kind of paraphrasing the way people believe things, that has these 3 characteristics, it's probably a limiting belief and it's probably not true. Okay. The first P is permanent. And that is a feeling that not only is this time bad, but it's always bad. That feeling of the permanency of something where it's always not good today. It wasn't good yesterday. It won't be good tomorrow. It's a permanent condition. The second one is if you believe that it's pervasive. So it's not only I'm bad at this one thing, I'm bad at everything. Everything always goes wrong in my life. It not only did it go wrong yesterday and it'll go wrong tomorrow, but everything in my life is bad. And the third P is personal. If you have a belief where it's about you in a non-controlling way, or a way where you have no power in that relationship. So it not only is it bad, not only was it bad yesterday, not only will it be bad tomorrow, not only is everything in my life bad, it's all bad because I have something going wrong about who I am. So it's those 3 Ps of permanent, pervasive, and personal tends to be something where you've internalized a reality that probably isn't real. Now, how do you begin to defeat that? Well, the first step is you have to identify that they're limiting beliefs. That's why I'm kind of talking about what they look like and what kinds of flavors they have, is because if you never examine your beliefs and you never realize you have a limiting belief, well, then there's nothing you can do about it. So the first step is to recognize, hey, this is a limiting belief. And what I actually have people do is take a sheet of paper and divide it in 2, take it and divide it in half. And on the left-hand column, just start writing down all of the beliefs you have about the world, all of the things that you think are true about yourself, all of the things that you think are true about others, just like brain dump it. And then within that, begin to identify which are those that have those characteristics that mean that they potentially are holding you back. They're potentially keeping you from having the confidence that maybe you could do something. And then on the right-hand side of the page, for those limiting beliefs, start trying to identify times that there's been an exception to that, times when it hasn't been true, times when it hasn't been as bad all the time. That's breaking down the permanent structure. Times when it went wrong and it really didn't have anything to do with you. It had to do with other things. That's that personal piece. Times where, yeah, maybe this part of my life wasn't going well, but over here things were going okay. And that's kind of taking on that pervasive piece. Because if you begin to find evidence of the fact that this belief isn't always true, then you have the ability to begin to take action that then reinforces the belief, because there's kind of a feedback loop between belief and action. If we believe the world is a certain way, then we act in that way, and it sort of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Then the world acts that way. And if we begin to act in a way that is different, then we also can begin to believe in a way that is different. And the first step to that is actually looking for evidence of the fact that this belief may not be 100% true. Maybe it is true some of the time, but it's not always true. And the minute you can start breaking that loop of permanent, pervasive, and personal, then you can begin to take action that's outside of that. Working with a coach or a counselor or somebody from outside who can kind of help you take those actions and reinforce that, and having accountability and all of these pieces obviously helps with that. But that, honestly, it's still something you can even start on your own and take action to begin to break down. And then over time, that builds that loop, and that belief kind of gets reprogrammed.
Let me ask you about the third P, personal. In the context of confidence, Henry Ford made a statement, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. In that statement attributed to Henry Ford, if I think I can't do it, I'm already self-defeated. How would you deal with a person who feels, honestly, and this seems to be personal to me, I don't have confidence, and I have failed at different things and so forth. And I agree with you. I can't make a person feel confident if they don't want to. They have to want to. They have to have the internal drive to get better and so forth. But is there a way to overcome a period of low confidence? Let's just say that in the context of personal, I've had some life events that were very memorable to me, and they've caused me to have low confidence, and I'm just not sure I want to take on something, because one more failure may just bring about a bad memory or that kind of thing. I don't know that I've developed the scenario that you would think of as that personal, but I have worked with, and in fact I'm working with some people whose confidence is pretty low, and just wondering how you would work with a person like that.
So, the short answer is it depends, because it's hard to brainstorm all of the possible ways to do it because of not having, a specific person with a specific scenario in front of me. So let me kind of talk about some of the general categories of ways, because there's more than one way to attack it. There's more than one way to work with it. And there's more than one way to help someone unpack it. The first thing to say is, if someone's been beat up a lot, and recently, maybe, they've had some grief, a business is closed, there's been a bankruptcy, these sorts of things beat people up. And it is okay to take a moment in time and grieve and get over it and deal with the grief. Because I've seen people try to move past a traumatic situation too quickly, and then they end up carrying that trauma around for decades, instead of actually dealing with it in the moment and spending that time dealing with the grief. And it's not getting over it, and it's not, getting past it, because you never really get past a strong grief moment, the loss of a spouse, the loss of a child, a bankruptcy, loss of a business, these sorts of things. But you can learn to process it. And so that may be something that you need to attack, is dealing with the underlying trauma or the underlying grief. In a lot of cases, though, when they're personalizing it and they're saying, hey, this is about me, everything in my life, is bad. There's nothing going wrong. Their life is a country and western song, right? Their dog died, their truck is everything's a negative event, right? That's just constantly. And let's face it, we've all run into those people, at the water cooler, and just kind of sidle away, because it's like, I don't want to talk to you. Everything's always wrong. A lot of it is, if they want to change, if this is something that they've decided is no longer the way they want to see the world, it's helping them look for the small moments that aren't that way. Identify the one thing that is a positive, or identify the one thing they want to change. I don't want to do this anymore. Okay, great. What's the single smallest action you can take in that direction? Because one of the big mistakes we make is we try to go from I'm scared, or I'm nervous, or I lack confidence, or I feel like everything's going to fall apart if I take action, to I need to speak in front of 5,000 people and have, this huge event. No, you don't have to go from 0 to 1,000 miles an hour. Go from 0 to 1 mile an hour. Look for the single smallest action you can take. Can you get through a day and not actually complain about anything? And just keep a tally mark. How many times did I complain today? How many times did I do a negative event today? How many times did I say one of these statements, one of these I can't statements? I challenge people, never use the word I can't, okay? Or I had to. Instead, use the word choose. I chose to. It's okay to choose not to do something, and it's okay to choose to do something, but recognizing that you have the power of choice begins to give you that power to then make a choice. You didn't have to do it, you chose to do it. Because the truth is, most of the time you did choose, because let's face it, even if I sat there and put a gun to your head and said, if you don't do this, I'm going to shoot you, you technically still have a choice. And I can tell you, there are some things that if someone had put a gun to my head and said, do this or I'll shoot you, I'd go, you're going to have to shoot me. Because I'm not going to do it. Okay. There are other things where I'd be like, yep, no problem. I'll do that right now. It's okay. Don't shoot me. But because you have different levels of things that you commit to. So instead of trying to go from 0 to 1,000, look for what is the tiniest action you can take. What's the smallest step you can take that moves you in the direction you want to go? Because all too often, the reason we never get started is because we're looking at the belief as this huge, monolithic, overwhelming reality, when in reality, if we just take a tiny step in the right direction, that change in momentum over time compounds, and that actually over time breaks down to the belief. Because recognize, it took you a long time to develop that belief. It's going to take you some time to develop a new belief and to change that belief or to overcome it.
Do you have any limiting beliefs? Is there anything you would like to accomplish? Something that could be difficult to accomplish? Maybe something outside your comfort zone? Something you want to attempt that would take you to the, quote, next level? What's holding you back? Is anything at all? Do you feel comfortable, confident that you will succeed? You will, if you don't end up exactly where you want to be on the first attempt, you'll evaluate and continue going until you eventually succeed to whatever the new venture is you want? Or do you have thoughts that hold you back? Something to the effect that, I'm not sure I should even try this because. I want to encourage you not to have those limiting beliefs. Get with someone who can encourage you to work through your strengths. Want for you to experience the exhilaration of having accomplished. No, that's very well said. As you were talking, you brought to mind my father-in-law, who would always say to me and others, don't ever tell me you can't do it. Tell me you choose not to do it, but don't tell me you can't do it. And I think there's an aspect of positive thinking in that, Scott, and I'm curious what your thoughts are about. I'm not an advocate that positive thinking will encourage you to do everything or will conquer everything, but I am an advocate, and I think you were saying just moments ago that if you're facing a mountain, just take it in smaller rocks, smaller pebbles, so to speak. And if we devise small wins, that'll help develop the confidence that I can. And those kind of things, I don't want to try to develop a scenario that you would not advocate. That's just one thing that I try to help some people do. That if we can develop some small wins, that'll help develop your confidence. I encourage you to be around positive thinking people. The more you're around positive thinking people, the more you tend to become like them. But is it that kind of environment that can help people overcome some of their self-limiting doubts, low confidence, and so forth?
Yeah, environment is part of it. Surrounding yourself with positive accountability and positive people in your life is part of it. Action is part of it. What actions are you taking? Because passivity, sitting back and just letting life happen to you, is never something that develops and overcomes limiting beliefs. You've got to happen to the world. Looking for the small actions and taking small wins. That's why, the debt snowball versus the debt avalanche. Somebody has a lot of debt, they'll advocate, there's different methods of paying it off. Mathematically, there are certain methods that mathematically look really good on paper, but nobody ever actually follows through with them. Well, then that's not actually the best method. You want the method that people will actually follow through on. And that has more to do with psychology than it does with math. The same thing happens in other categories. So when you have someone that's lost hope, you're looking for what are the small things that we can do to begin to re-inject hope into their life. Because that's really usually a lack of confidence in large part comes from a lack of hope. It's a feeling of hopelessness. It's a feeling of nothing that I do matters. So why do anything? Why I haven't really failed because I never even tried, that kind of mentality. And it's just looking for the small actions they can take begins to move them in the direction of, hey, you know what? I can do something. Maybe I can't do everything, but I can do something. And let me do that something that I can do. And if I do that often enough and do that repeatedly and with consistency, it's amazing what you can accomplish.
You're right. And when you say take action, certainly, just sitting around and saying, well, I think I can, and nothing happens. Yeah, you're right. Nothing is going to happen if you don't take action. But in that context, Scott, is there an aspect that by taking action, we have to be willing to come short of, to fail, whatever it is? I use the term having a failing doesn't mean that I personally am a failure. It just means I didn't achieve the goal that I had set out. I may not get to the goal that I'm choosing in a straight line. It may be a curvilinear or a zigzag approach, but I'm not going to stop going to where I want to get. It's a worthwhile goal. I'm in agreement with you that, hey, let's take action. I mean, we have to. And we have to be willing to fail. Or let's just say come short of, but we're always moving toward the goal. If that's what our attitude is, eventually we're going to make it. But I think it's a matter of being around some positive thinking people. That's what my life has been. And perhaps your life has been something like that. Be around some positive people who encourage me that, yep, you can do it. You just keep going. And eventually that helps me develop the confidence with those small wins.
Well, and the thing about it is too, so I would reframe that. I don't actually think you have to deal with, quote, failure to move forward or expect even failure, because it all depends on what you define as success as to whether or not there's even failure. So for example, if you've taken action and you didn't get the result you wanted, but you've learned something that makes it more likely that you'll get closer to that result the next time, well, that's not a failure. That's a success because you learned something. It's part of it is we frame things as a failure, and in our head, that makes it an absolute statement. That makes it permanent. Well, I failed, so I might as well not try anymore. But if you recognize that that's all in how you define success and failure, you get to define that. Same thing for you said, I had a failure. I'm not a failure. Again, that's that personal statement. That's that P of personal. If you always say, I failed, I'm a failure. Well, no, you failed. There was something that you wanted that didn't happen, but that doesn't make you a failure. That just means this event didn't come off the way you wanted it to. And again, you can even say, was it even really a failure if you learned something, or if you grew, or if you had a step and now you know something that I'm not going to do next time because that hurt. I don't want to do that anymore. Great. You learned something. I teach a lot of other people how to become coaches. And in that training, every once in a while, we'll have somebody that gets into it 30, 40, 60 days. And they look up and they're like, I don't really, now that I kind of understand what coaching is, I don't think I want to be a coach. And I'm like, that is awesome. That is a win, because now you figured out a path that you don't have to go down anymore. And you can go pivot and find something else that is what you want to do and is your calling that's on your heart. It's a win. It's not a loss, and people kind of look at you, they're like, well, but wait a minute, that's because to their mind, that would be a failure. And it's like, it's not if you learn something. So you can kind of recognize that that's part of that positivity. Now, as far as the positive people part, I've actually had a lot of negative people in my life, and I've also had some positive people. Part of it is learning to not only who you surround yourself with, but who you let to take up real estate in your head. Because we all have those internal voices or those internal pictures. And sometimes somebody will say something to you in your head, and you need to think to yourself, where is that voice really coming from? Who is that coming from? Is it something that my father said to me when I was growing up? Is it something that, my uncle said to me when I was growing up? Is it something my really negative friend says all the time? Or is it something that, somebody who's really successful, who I admire, says all the time? Where is that voice coming from? And literally pick and choose which voices you let take up real estate in your head, because we all have those voices. And by the way, I talked to a group of about 5,000 entrepreneurs one time, and I said, how many of you have a voice in your head that talks to you all the time? Every single hand went up. And I said, how many of you is that voice nice to you? And every single hand went down. That voice tends to say things to ourselves that we would never say to another human being, especially a human being who we cared about. And yet it has that dialogue. And a lot of times those voices aren't really our voices. They're the voices we grew up with, especially if you grew up in a negative situation. You'll hear those litanies, and you have to recognize where it's coming from and break that down to be able to move past that and replace that with a better internal script. So I actually name my internal voice. My internal voice is named Harry. Okay. Harry is a duck-billed platypus, and he is bright purple, and he wears a birthday hat on his head. So Harry's kind of funny looking. And so when Harry shows up, it's just like, hey, Harry, how you doing? There you are again. You showed up, you're talking to me today. I expect it. I'm not surprised by it when Harry shows up, and I just kind of visit with him. And it's like, why? Because Harry wants to protect me. Okay. Harry's real job is he wants to protect me. He wants to keep me safe. The problem is sometimes the way he keeps you safe is by holding you back, And so you got to look at it and you got to go, thank you. I appreciate you. You're trying to keep me safe, but you know what? I need to do this anyway. And I'm going to do this anyway. And then you take the action, it's don't misunderstand. I'm not trying to oversimplify this. This is not something, especially if you've grown up in a really negative situation or had negative experiences or had these scripts play out in your life. This takes energy and effort and work, and it takes working with other people. And this is where surrounding yourself with positive people can help, because they can help you overcome that internal script quicker, and you can begin to break it down and move forward, so that over time it gets easier and easier and easier. It's spiral downwards, or you can have the spiral upward, and it takes energy to spiral upward.
And as you're talking, Scott, you remind me of a coach who told me numerous times, you need to feel comfortable feeling uncomfortable. And by feeling uncomfortable, you're trying something new. And in the context of failings, I agree with what you're saying. We may come up short of a desired goal, but if we evaluate what it was that kept us from getting there, in other words, we learn from it, as you were very eloquent in saying, then that's an evaluated experience, and we're always going to move forward from that. So that's just an approach that I take, and it sounds like that's somewhat the approach you take too, that all evaluated experience is good because we can learn from it.
If you learn from it. Now, that's the truth too, is because sometimes we have experiences and we don't evaluate them, and we don't think about them, and we don't process them, and we don't learn from them. And then we do them over and over again, and it's like, at some point you kind of have to get off that merry-go-round and go, how's that working for me? This isn't working. Let me change and do something different and try something different, and maybe get a different result, because there is truth in that, just doing the same thing over and over again and never evaluating that, never learning from it, never getting off that particular merry-go-round. And again, we've all know people that do that, and that they're stuck. They've got to choose a new direction and a new step or a new action to be able to break that cycle.
Scott, I want to thank you for sharing your wisdom with our listeners. And some of our listeners feel stuck. They feel like they just lack the ambition to move forward, but you've got a very upbeat attitude. Some people are encourageable to move forward. We certainly want to help those people to move forward and evaluate experiences. There's nothing that can keep a person down with a great attitude, keep them down permanently. We'll be down temporarily, but with a great attitude, we're going to keep moving forward. At least that's my thought about it. Scott, I want to thank you for sharing your exuberance. Thank you for inspiring our listeners. Keep moving forward. There will be times we're going to come up short, but just keep going.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's something to be said for consistency and forward momentum that builds over time and can really change your life.
That's right on. Well, thank you for sharing, Scott.
Thank you.
Do you feel stuck, held back? Do you feel there's something more to what you can accomplish, more to your life fulfillment? There are any number of terms that apply to this, but there's sometimes we just feel held back for various reasons. As Scott said, some of those limiting beliefs are permanent. They may be a product of an environment, any number of things that might keep us from things that we want to achieve, but there's this little voice, and Scott calls it Harry. Is there a voice, so to speak? Is there something that causes doubt? Is there something that leads you to think, hey, I've been there before, I've tried it, don't want to venture that again? Anything like that. Let me encourage you to evaluate what you want to do. Evaluate your strengths. Look at what those things are you would like to achieve, those things that could add fulfillment if you're able to achieve what you want to. I think there is value in having consultation with close confidants who know you well, know your strengths, and those people can help affirm what you have made as a self-assessment. Nobody knows you as well as you do. So even if a person thinks that, well, I'm not sure you're best suited for that, you're the one who's the final determinant, and you're the one who can achieve the greater good, those things for which you know you're best suited. You know what will provide life fulfillment. That's what you need to pursue. That's what you need to go after. But there are some times we're held back because of things in the past, some things that were said to or about us, and a number of things such as that can keep us from moving forward. Scott was saying, and Marty and I wholeheartedly endorse it, take action. Move forward. Do the thing that can get you toward what you think can be a greater life fulfillment. And even if you fall short of, even if you say, well, that's not exactly it, evaluate what you've done and keep moving forward, keep progressing toward that goal. Everybody can benefit from coaching. Scott is a coach. Marty and I are life coaches. We can help people over any limiting doubts, anything that's holding you back from achieving your God-given potential. Marty and I are certified through the John Maxwell Enterprise. We would like to have an opportunity to work with you to help you achieve your maximum potential. Contact us at ron@thecooperculture.com or Marty, M-A-R-T-Y, at thecooperculture.com. Let's schedule a complimentary 30-minute session, and we will do what we can to help you achieve your greatest results. Through that, you'll be able to determine if Marty or I are the right people to help you through and help you over anything that may be holding you back from achieving your very best. We know what it is to have that life fulfillment, to move forward, to achieve. We know the exhilaration of reaching goals you have set for yourself, possibly those things that you're thinking, well, boy, that's pretty tough. I'm not sure if I can make it or not. But when you do, it's exhilarating. We hope we can warrant a 5-star rating with this podcast series. We hope you'll want to share this podcast and what you learned from it with your friends. What we share with each other, comment with each other, we can help each other grow. We want to advance each other. We hope you'll want to share this podcast with your Facebook friends, your LinkedIn connections, your Instagram community, and your Twitter community. The more we share, the greater the opportunity we will have to learn from each other, to advance others, to help them achieve their maximum potential. We look forward to working with each one of you.